In the wake of the triumphant release of their fifth album, Lynyrd Skynyrd found unparalleled success. However, just 3 days after the much-anticipated launch, the band faced an unimaginable tragedy. On October 20th, 1977, a plane crash claimed the lives of 3 band members, including the iconic Ronnie Van Zant, leaving a void that could never be filled. What led to the tragic plane crash that claimed the lives of Lynyrd Skynyrd members, including Ronnie Van Zant? Despite official investigations pointing to pilot error, the strange circumstances surrounding the aircraft's unusual demise persist into the 21st century. Join us on a journey to uncover the untold details behind the last horrifying minutes of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Following the album's release on October 17th, Skynyrd embarked on an extensive American tour, opting for a Convair 240 dual-prop airplane over conventional flights or lengthy bus rides. This decision aimed to streamline their travel between concert venues, catering to their demanding schedule. Ironically, just months prior, Aerosmith had considered the same aircraft, but backed out due to safety concerns, observing the pilot and co-pilot indulging in Jack Daniels during an inspection. This decision likely spared Aerosmith from a similar fate. Post a Lakeland, Florida concert, Skynyrd boarded the ill-fated plane for Greenville, South Carolina on October 19, 1977. Sparks and flames erupted from the plane's right engine mid-flight, sparking immediate concern among band members. Some, including lead singer Ronnie Van Zant, were warned by their peers that they would abandon the tour unless a different aircraft was secured. Cassie, backup vocalist and sister of guitarist Steve Gaines, was particularly fearful of the plane, opting for the band's cramped equipment truck. Van Zant, however, persuaded her to board, emphasizing that changing planes would entail canceling tour dates, a prospect vehemently opposed by Van Zant, who believed in honoring their commitment to loyal Southern fans. Little did they know, tragedy awaited them on October 20th. After a captivating performance in Greenville, the band and crew boarded the aging airplane bound for Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The lineup included Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Alan Collins, Gary Rossington, Artemis Pyle, Leon Wilson, Billy Powell, and a trio of talented female backup singers known as the Honnet: Leslie Hawkins, JoJo Billingsley, and Cassie Gaines. Van Zant's reassurances to Cassie during boarding couldn't foreshadow the fate that awaited them. The next stop was Louisiana State University for a performance that never materialized. Despite the initial smooth stretch of their 700-mile flight, the pilots faced a grim realization: low fuel levels and impending disaster. October 20th, 1977, has been inscribed in the historical narrative of music, not as a moment of anticipated glory, but as a somber turning point. Lynyrd Skynyrd, the venerable Southern rock icons, had recently unveiled their revolutionary album, Street Survivors, just 3 days prior. Bathed in the afterglow of triumph, the band graced the stage at the Greenville Memorial Auditorium in North Carolina, delivering mesmerizing performances of classics like Sweet Home Alabama and the iconic Freebird. However, unbeknownst to the founding members, this would unwittingly become their final performance together. Abruptly, the right engine faltered, the same engine that had posed problems on a previous flight. In a frantic endeavor to transfer fuel from the left engine to the ailing right, the flight crew inadvertently jettisoned the remaining fuel into the atmosphere, plunging the aircraft into a perilous situation. Desperation seized control, prompting the pilots to alter their course towards the nearest refuge, Maumee Pike Airport, just a few miles from Maumee, Mississippi. However, the grim truth unfolded. They lacked the fuel even to reach this nearby haven. At an altitude of 10,000 feet, with both engines powerless due to fuel depletion, the situation worsened as the left propeller also ceased to function. Faced with impending catastrophe, the only recourse was an emergency landing in an open field to stand a chance at survival. Amidst this unfolding crisis, the passengers remained oblivious to the imminent danger enveloping them. Ronnie Van Zant, fatigued from a night of revelry, lay sound asleep in the aisle with a pillow at the back of the plane. Other passengers engaged in a poker game, attempting to while away the time. Drummer Artemis Pyle decided to check on the flight crew by visiting the cockpit. As Pyle entered the cabin, a visibly distressed pilot, Walter McCrae urgently instructed him to return to his seat and fasten his seatbelt. The gravity of the situation manifested. spreading anxiety throughout the aircraft. Most passengers sat in stunned silence, closing their eyes and clenching their fists while others turned to prayer, seeking a miraculous intervention. Guitarist Gary Rossington vividly recalled a disconcerting noise, reminiscent of hundreds of baseball bats striking the exterior of the plane as it collided with trees. Veering off course from the intended landing area, the aircraft found itself compelled to crash into a swampy, wooded expanse. Grazing treetops for nearly 1,000 feet, the cacophony intensified until the plane abruptly halted, wedged in a 3-foot-thick pine tree. The devastating impact of the crash unfolded rapidly, tearing the plane asunder within the brief span of 10 to 12 seconds, hurtling from 100 miles per hour to an abrupt stop. This powerful force ejected passengers from the aircraft, casting them onto the unforgiving forest floor. Gary Rossington, experiencing a momentary loss of consciousness during the crash, awoke minutes later to find himself amidst the wreckage, the plane's door resting atop him. In his disoriented state, he surveyed the scene, realizing the destruction that had occurred. Wings and tail torn off, the cockpit severed, and the deceased pilot separated entirely. The plane's remnants skidded 500 feet after impact, leaving a stark trail of devastation in its wake. In an ironic turn, the lack of fuel, the very cause of the initial crash, emerged as an inadvertent blessing. The absence of fuel prevented the aircraft from erupting into flames upon impact, potentially safeguarding numerous lives. However, despite the absence of fire, not all passengers were fortunate enough to survive the harrowing ordeal. Tragically, long before the ill-fated flight, Ronnie Van Zant had openly expressed a haunting premonition that he would not live to see his 30th birthday. Recalling poignant conversations with his father, Ronnie consistently told him, "Daddy, I'll never be 30 years old. Daddy, that's my limit." This unsettling prophecy was not confined to Van Zant alone. Drummer Artemis Pyle, reflecting on a conversation in Tokyo, Japan, revealed that Ronnie had foretold he would not live to 30, opting to go out with his boots on, a metaphor for a life on the road. Despite attempts to dismiss such ominous sentiments, Pyle conceded that Ronnie seemed attuned to his destiny. Even Ronnie's wife, Judy, attested to the frequency of his foreboding remarks. When news of the plane crash reached her, an instinctive realization dawned that Ronnie was among those who did not survive. She poignantly remarked, "He told me so many times that I realized that he knew what he was talking about." Unfortunately, his foreboding premonition manifested into a tragic reality. 87 days shy of his 30th birthday, Ronnie Van Zant met a violent end during the catastrophic plane crash. Violently ejected from his seat, he struck a compartment, succumbing instantly. The toll extended beyond the frontman, claiming guitarist Steve Gaines, who perished on impact, backing vocalist Cassie Gaines, thrown from the plane and succumbing shortly after, and the band's road manager Dean Kilpatrick, discovered lifeless in a swamp. Pilots Walter McCree and William Gray also lost their lives. Was it the end for all the passengers? As the majority of survivors were positioned towards the rear of the aircraft, none emerged unscathed, as serious injuries afflicted every soul on board. Keyboardist Billy Powell bore the brunt of the impact, enduring severe injuries, including a nearly severed nose and extensive facial and leg lacerations, teetering perilously close to fatal bleeding. Meanwhile, guitarist Gary Rossington confronted a daunting litany of fractures, breaking both arms, both legs, both wrists, both ankles, and his pelvis. Even though drummer Artemis Pyle had many broken ribs, he showed strength by going through difficult areas, like a swampy creek and a dark field. He made his way to a farmhouse nearby to get help, especially as it was getting dark. As night fell, a searching helicopter scoured the area for survivors, but the absence of fire rendered the wreckage concealed in darkness. Undeterred, Pyle pressed forward, crossing a barbed wire fence and incurring puncture wounds. Approaching the farmhouse, his arrival prompted a startling encounter with a vigilant farmer wielding a rifle, who, in the confusion, discharged a shot into Pyle's left shoulder. Gasping for breath, Pyle managed to convey the critical information about a plane crash, prompting the farmer's rapid assistance and the subsequent arrival of emergency responders, ushering all survivors to various hospitals. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, meticulously investigated the incident, determining that fuel exhaustion and a resultant total loss of power from both engines stemmed from the crew's neglect of fuel supply. Contributory factors included insufficient flight planning and an unspecified malfunction in the right engine, leading to escalated fuel consumption. Although the engine malfunction was not identified as a significant mechanical failure, the NTSB attributed the crash ultimately to the crew's inattention to the fuel supply. Regrettably, the band's tragic narrative extended beyond the fateful plane crash. In 1986, a grievous car accident left founding member and guitarist Alan Collins paralyzed, accompanied by the tragic demise of his girlfriend. Collins succumbed to chronic pneumonia, a complication of paralysis, on January 23, 1990. The band's bassist at the time of the crash, Leon Wilkerson, met his end on July 27, 2001 in a hotel room, the result of emphysema and chronic liver disease, compounding the band's series of losses. Further sorrow befell Lynyrd Skynyrd in 2009 with the passing of keyboardist Billy Powell due to a heart attack. The original Lynyrd Skynyrd concluded its journey with the lamentable demise of Gary Rossington on March 5, 2023. With a prolific discography boasting over 60 albums and sales exceeding 30 million copies globally, the band resides as an immortal rock and roll icon, enshrined in the hallowed halls of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Their enduring resonance transcends generations, cementing their status as eternal music legends.